And so this is the face that, oh, wait, I'm making markups now.
Don't make it bigger, Ted.
Oh, yeah, this is what I do.
No.
You've just drawn attention to it, Sil. You've just drawn attention. This is like, when are you gonna learn? He's like our brother, you know.
He is. I'm gonna get a wedgie.
He finds the weakness and then he goes in.
Yeah, you fucker.
I got you.
You want to fuck on me, Ted?
Profile picture.
You want to fuck on me, Ted? Ooh, Ted's fucking on me. Oh,
that's a new phrase for me.
Bro, I do not play fair.
What movie is that from?
Yeah,
wasn't it? It was the one where they went to Vegas. All the guys in the
where the guys in the
Hangover.
You
want to fuck on me?
This is why when we're waiting for our guests, this is the most dangerous part of our podcast, is us three waiting for our guests to show up.
The Hollow Buddy. And we all feel hollow sometimes.
All right, greetings and salutations. Welcome to the Hollow Bunny Leadership Podcast. I am Sylvia Moyer, and my co-host is the lovely, the effervescent Kristen Zeman. We are retired police chiefs. We are students of leadership. And the Hollow Bunny podcast, however, is not just for cops. This podcast is for anyone who has an interest in really examining leadership, evaluating leadership, learning more, and really diving into the life lessons, particularly, and I always say that word, and I always hate that I actually say that word because I can never say that word, especially,
there you
go. The life lessons of Kristen and I and our delightful guests. So what fills your bunny? Well, we dive into that with our guests, and Kristen is going to introduce our fantastic guest today. We are excited to have you.
Yes, I am. Today we have on the podcast for our millions of listeners, Andrea Darlas. She is an Emmy-nominated TV and radio reporter, born in Oak Lawn. Oh yeah, I'm going way back, Andrea. Born in Oak Lawn and raised in Orland Park. Darlas joined WGN in 1997 after 4 years at WJOL Joliet, 1340 AM, and the former WLLI in Joliet. She started in 2011 working part-time as a freelance reporter for WGN-Channel 9 in Chicago. And in addition to winning 2 Peter Lisagor, did I say his name right? Lisagor Awards?
You absolutely did.
For her radio and television work from the Chicago Headline Club, and 5 Silver Dome Awards. Dome Awards. My mind goes to a place there. Dome Awards for Best Newscast from the Illinois Broadcasters Association. Darlas was named Best Reporter by the IBA Silver Dome Awards in 2017. And then in a kind of plot twist-ish, after more than 21 years as a multi-talented and award-winning news anchor, reporter, and program host at talk radio WGN 720, she started in 2019 as Senior Director of Constituent Engagement at her alma mater, the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Ooh, go Illini. She leads university's engagement and outreach efforts throughout the metropolitan area and serves as public affairs and media liaison. She's also added podcaster to her projects. And so she is a professional like we are, Sylvia, a professional podcaster. So it's through actually WLS 890 AM. It's called Show and Tell with Andrea Darlas. And it showcases Windy City attractions, including cultural experiences, plays, museums, and musicals. And, oh my gosh, you were inducted in 2019 into the WGN Radio Walk of Fame. Oh, I'm out of words. Welcome.
I know.
Andrea Darlas. And thank you so much for coming. Bye-bye now. Before we begin, I do want to, so the two of you have never met, but you are both friends of mine, but I want to share something with you because I really find that there are things in our lives that bring us together. And you guys both know what a big Dolly Parton fan I am. And both of you guys sent me this. I have 2 boxes of Dolly Parton cake mix, and each of you sent me these. Is this not kismet? Is this
It's
not
like kismet.
This is serendipitous, and all of those sexy words that you guys. I'm so happy that you guys are now meeting each other on our podcast, and I'm going to bake you a Dolly Parton cake.
Well,
That is out. Sylvia, great minds, because Kristen, I thought Sylvia we got you the coconut and the lemon, and we thought we were being so cool getting it at Dollywood, because that's where we were at the time. And I thought you got her the lemon, so I gave her the coconut. So I will give you your lemon.
So like, I don't know what I got her.
I know you're a professional cake maker, though.
I mean,
so you have to use the box of Dolly.
Listen, it's Dolly, so yeah, I will totally use it. I just love that so much, but I got such a kick out of that. You guys know me so well. It's just the best. So welcome to our little podcast. Don't be nervous because we have so many listeners. Probably Dolly Parton is listening, wouldn't you say? Probably.
I would assume. Why wouldn't
That's
she
clear.
be? I mean, she's got to take a break from filming her Christmas special.
Yeah,
to watch the Hollow Bunny.
She needs a break. Yeah. So Andrea, thanks for coming on the show. We're trying to really get a vast array of people, and I love the idea of having people from different professions, different industries, and of course, journalism, media goes hand in hand with law enforcement and that transparency and accountability. And so I'm a big fan of media, and I think that you guys are suffering at times through the same thing that law enforcement is, this identity crisis, and people really put us all sort of in the same disparaging place at times, and a bit unfairly. But before we even get that, tell me, what exactly did you want to do and be when you were growing up? Was this what you've always wanted to do, or did it take a turn for you?
Well, first of all, thank you both for having me, because this is a lot of fun. Kristen, I've known you for a long time now. You're one of my dearest friends. Sylvia, I feel like I know you because Kristen always speaks so highly of you. But yeah, I always knew I wanted to be a reporter or a journalist. When I was in fourth grade, we took a tour, our school in Orland. We went to the Tribune Processing Center. It was called the Freedom Center at Chicago and Halstead. And that's in the old days where they had the printing presses. And I thought that was so cool and so neat. And I saw, there was like a mini newsroom there, and there was a man sitting in the corner kind of by himself at a desk, like the school desks that would lift up. And I said to the tour guide, what is he doing? And again, this is fourth grade. And they said, oh, well, he's one of the copy editors of the paper. He checks for, spelling and errors and, grammar mistakes, grammatical errors. And I thought, I'm good at spelling. And I had won the third grade spelling bee at Prairie School in Orland. So I thought, I'm going to be, get this, you guys, I'm going to be the copy editor. The copy editor of the Chicago Tribune. So I wrote an essay the next year in elementary school about how I was going to be the copy editor of the newspaper. And I look back at that now and laugh, it was fun. But I always had a, and my dad was a big news hound, and my mom is presently, a big news junkie. And we've just always enjoyed the talk shows and the news programs and current events. So I always knew I wanted to be a reporter or a journalist, and it has, Kristen, changed. I know we're going to delve into that.
Yeah, for sure.
Boy, back in the day.
I have to ask, Sylvia, do you subscribe to any newspapers?
I do, yes.
You do? Like papers?
One paper, but then I get them. I subscribe to several electronic.
Okay, you brought up your mom, and this is why I just asked that question, because Andrea's mom is so adorable, and she cuts out news articles. So whenever I made the paper in the Chicagoland area, she would cut it out and send it to Andrea. But my favorite is that she would write little notes in the margin. She still does. She still does. And I just think that is the cutest thing. And so now whenever I see someone in the wild reading a newspaper, if they're like on a plane or anywhere, I stop and I just say, I'm so happy that you have an actual newspaper in your hands, because I just missed that. But I love that about your mom.
Oh yeah, she still does that. She reads the paper, cover to cover, except the sports section. She likes the Cubs, but she's not a big sports fan. So she'll read the paper cover to cover, and she does. Sylvia clips out the articles, and she adores Kristen. And for everything from when you became chief, through Pratt, through present day, through your book signing and whatnot, she'll clip it and she will write little notes. And for a while before, Kristen, you were one of the finalists to be Chicago Police Superintendent. She would write, she should be the superintendent. She would write these little notes, and she would spend probably $5 a week in postage sending me the clippings, probably of news stories that we had already covered. But
wow, if only your mom was the mayor and could have hired me. If we could go backwards in time. So
in the way back.
That's another story. That's a remarkable thing, because now what do? We may just screenshot something and send it electronically. My mom did the same thing. I have just boxes of cute little notes of articles of interesting stories that she read, and she'd always send me a little note. It's really a remarkable thing that we are losing. And that's cool that she did that. And she's got really good taste in superintendents, gotta say.
Hands down.
And she's not really into sports, so she's totally my spirit animal. So Andrea, then how did you make you started in radio station. So then where did you pivot, or how did you pivot into television? Because that was one of my favorite things is on Sunday mornings. And I still, relish those days of Sunday mornings, grabbing my coffee, and I would turn on WGN and Andrea would be on my television. And I was like, oh my gosh, you were in my bedroom. Don't be weird about that. But yeah, so what was that transition like for you? Was it purposeful, or did it just fall in your lap?
It was a little bit of both, Kristen. I had so when I was in college, I had a couple of my first radio job was at the college station. It was a classic rock station, and we got $5 per shift.
Ooh.
So it was a 3 or 4 hour shift. So after taxes, it was like $4.82. So that was my first paying job in radio as a DJ. And then I had a couple of internships at 2 different stations in Champaign. And then I did a TV internship, which was a station called WGBO. It was Channel 66 back in Chicago. And it usually, before it was a Spanish station, it played a lot of reruns, of Three's Company and The Love Boat and shows like that, 70s type shows. And so I really enjoyed that. But then, and when I was looking for jobs out of college, again, it was 1994. So I was looking for either a radio or a TV job. So I was sending out cassette tapes and 3/4 inch and VHS tapes to TV stations. And radio happened to be the first that bit. And that was the station in Joliet. And I ended up being there for 4 years as a reporter, then an anchor, and then the news director. And then in 2000, I was working for WGN for a few years. And we kind of started this synergistic role with the Chicago Tribune. So the Tribune owned the Cubs, WGN Radio, WGN TV. And it was kind of at that point where we started thinking, you know what, we can use some of the TV reporters on radio, and some of the radio reporters can voice some of these exclusives for the newspaper, and they could appear on this thing called the internet. So it was still breaking through and kind of becoming, this digital world that we're living in right now, but it was new back in 2000. So I had started freelancing for CLTV, and that was an offshoot of Channel 9. And I work there with so many friends right now who are currently on Channel 9, like Sean Lewis and Ben Bradley, and different people who are behind the camera too, photographers and producers and desk editors. So I'd worked at CLTV for about 5 years freelancing, and then they moved their shop to Channel 9. And I was promoted to the morning anchor on WGN Radio with Spike O'Dell. So I worked with Spike O'Dell and Mary Vandeveld and Ann Maxfield and all these big names. So I kind of turned my focus back full-time to radio. And then in 2010, my dad passed away. And I had always talked to my dad about going back to TV. He's like, why don't you try it? Why don't you try it? So I approached the news director after my dad had passed away in late 2010. And he said, you know what? Yeah, you've done some work for CLTV. Why don't you try working here in a part-time role? So I started back at TV in 2011 while still keeping the radio job. So it was like a concurrent position. So I'd work at the radio station in the morning and then go to the TV station. And then in 2016 or 17, I believe, they had me do the weekend break full time. So I did that for almost 3 years, just every weekend. Yeah. It was great. It was tough working 7 days, but
yeah, right.
I mean, so much fun. So much fun.
Yeah.
So did I get it right? Were you in the field as an investigative reporter?
I did some investigative reporting for a while in radio. Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean that
We kind of
go ahead.
we wore so many different hats at that radio station. I mean, back when I started, so you would report, you would anchor, you'd write stories for the web, you would do series reporting. I mean, you would, and I would always tell students that, the more you could do, the more valuable you could make yourself, the better off that you'll be in your career.
Sure, and that field reporting is so unique. I'm sure Kristen had a similar experience. The stringers, the guys that were out on overnights, and I was a graveyard watch commander, and I established a relationship with them.
Yeah.
And so they knew me by name. I knew them by name. I'd say, fellas, you just wait right there. I'll be back in this amount of time, because I knew they had a need, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I always told them, I stand up on the curb, you stand down in the gutter so that I'm a little bit taller, and we,
Right.
and they really, right. And so establishing that relationship and having that trust, understanding my role, understanding their role, we had a great relationship, and both
Right.
were filled, and it was very respectful. Did you find that hard to do, or was it just, it seems like
Not
it'd be
at all.
natural for you. You're just, I just
that,
want to
and I'll
hug
tell you, and one of my first news directors, again, this is, and I'm so dating myself, but you know what, 1994, it was my first job out of college at this radio station in Joliet, and the news director, for 1 week, I shadowed him, and he was an old time, and I don't mean old in age, just an old time reporter, and really taught us, every morning you wake up at 4:00 and you go to the police department. So we had 3 stops every morning. Our first newscast was, I think, 5:30 in the morning. So by 4:00, you'd be at the Joliet Police Department, and you'd go through the reports, like the paper reports, and look for things. Mm-hmm. Then you talk to the watch commander. Then we'd go to the Will County Sheriff's Department. Hey, how's it going? Talk to the watch commander. That interaction, that face-to-face. I know nobody does this anymore, but that face-to-face. And then we go to the jail, the Will County Jail. Anybody booked overnight? No, all quiet. And you build those relationships and you build that rapport. I mean, and that's why, I still have a great relationship with the Will County State's Attorney, because I went every day for 4 years to that, to that county, those county offices, and you sat in the courtrooms, and you went back and you talked to the bailiffs. And I mean, there was just that boots on the ground, like hardcore reporting. And I think that is what's really lacking today in reporting.
Yeah, that face-to-face relationship. And a lot of people are saying they feel like clickbait. In policing, it's like, okay, I just feel like clickbait. You're going to do some.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So go ahead, Kristen.
No, I was going to say, I think you guys hit on something here that is so important. And the thing that I learned throughout my entire career in law enforcement was it's all about relationship building. And, and it's funny because there's such a parallel here in law enforcement as far as transparency and accountability to the public. And there was always people that had such an issue with reporters asking questions. And I never did, because number one, the truth always finds its way, no matter what, right? And so if you're just transparent from the beginning, and sometimes that means that you have to stand up in front of that microphone and say, to you guys who are asking the questions, this was not the very best of us. This was, we went wrong today. And, because you're going to find out anyway, but there was always so many people with the first thing I learned is, never say no comment. Just tell the truth. Say exactly what you can in that moment, because again, the truth will surface somewhere. It always does. The light is always shine, and so I've developed those relationships by saying, and there's sometimes where it's, listen, here's the investigation. We can't talk about it yet, but when we can, then that's where that relationship was built. And so when there were reporters that said, all right, I will wait, but it's just it's a give and take, and it's a choreographed dance, which is so interesting.
I think you explained it, you hit the nail on the head. It is a choreographed dance, and I so feel for not being in the media full time anymore, and looking at just things through a different lens now. I feel as though the two groups who will always be blamed for something are the police and the media.
Yep, absolutely.
So it's either blame the police or blame the media. I'm watching a mini series right now on Netflix, and it's the same kind of a thing. It's dark. It's the Jeffrey Dahmer, the 10, the docudrama right now. But at one point, the police are just being blamed for dropping the ball so many times on this particular case. Then in the next segment, well, it's the media's fault because the media portrayed it this way and they should have portrayed it this way and been more sensitive. So I literally just had this discussion the other day and I said, boy, the two professions that are just really, I don't want to say under fire, but under that microscopic lens are the media and the police right now, and I guess, I wish there could be more of a partnership between the police and the media, but I know the police sometimes see reporters, and there are bad reporters. There's bad apples in every single profession. But I just wish there could be more of a partnership between the two.
Yeah, and what, another parallel that just struck me as you were talking, I think the reason there's many reasons why law enforcement is vilified, and you see that in the headlines, but, we look to our law enforcement to enforce laws consistently with equity and fairness without applying bias and any of those things in the application of upholding the law, right? Well, we look to reporters and journalists and media to provide just the facts and full transparency without adding any bias. I could say the same sentence for both. And see, that's where we both go wrong, right? And that's where people look to us unfavorably, is when we start to add all of the talking heads and the pundits and the opinions. And it's like, stop, let's just report the news. And that's always been my favorite, is just let me decide, especially in the media, you tell me what happened and let me formulate my own opinion. And I feel like we're getting so far away from that.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. Kristen, I speak to journalism students, and for almost 30 years, I've talked to students, and, they're filled with just enthusiasm and questions. And how do I get an internship? And how do I break into the business? And this last time I spoke to a group of students, I was met with just this headbutting. And I said, I've always been, I'm a very tried and true journalist. Like, you present both sides of every story and let the viewer or the listener then form their opinion. But to be a balanced journalist, you have to give both sides of every story. And I was telling this group of students just that. You have to give this side and you have to give this side. You have to give the police side, the prosecutor side, the victim side, the victim's attorney side, however it is. And there were two students, and they said, well, why?
Why?
And I said, what do you mean, why? If you want to be a reporter and a journalist, you need to give both sides of the story. And one of the students said, well, I don't want to. I want to be able to give my opinion. I think as a human being and as a person, I should be able to give my opinion. And I said, absolutely. You should be able to give your opinion. And that's why you should be a columnist.
Exactly.
Or an op-ed, or have a podcast, write a blog. Exactly, Kristen, write a blog. That's your role. But that is not the role of a journalist. That's why you need to be fair and balanced. And I don't see a lot of that, unfortunately, sometimes anymore.
No kidding.
Okay, so I got to ask you, and it's in print, right? The Washington Post, the first time in its 140-year history, came up with a slogan, and it is this: democracy dies in darkness. And I was so struck by that, because I was struck by it for a number of reasons. At a time where, well, I won't explain all the reasons, but I will just kind of ask you, does that resonate for you? And if it does, how?
Say the quote again.
So, democracy dies in darkness. And it's the first time in the 140-year history of the Washington Post that they actually adopted a slogan. And it was after all of the condemnation of the media. And so they, as I understood it, as I read it, it was that they decided that they wanted that to be their slogan, because democracy prevails when all the facts see the light of day.
Yeah, that is true. Democracy does prevail when all the facts see the light of day. I agree with that. I think, whether or not they should come out with some sort of a slogan. Ooh. I don't know. Again, maybe I'm going back to the old school of, just report the facts, just report the news.
Interesting take.
But you know
I
what?
Like that. Yeah.
But you know what? It is funny if you go back and you look at some of the old Tribune columns or the old Sun-Times columns. They'll be like, Mrs. Zeman was wearing a red hat as she walked into the court. So they're, even the old newspapers, there's a lot of intricacies and just different portions of the story
Yeah.
that they tell that are they really relevant to the case? Are they really relevant to the story? So I think, when we hit the times of like Walter Cronkite and Edward R. Murrow and, even Diane Sawyer, who was a big idol of mine, I think we did transition to a place of fact. And then, I just don't like to see the laxness, the lackadaisicalness in reporting anymore.
As my son would say, beat change. Let's change direction here because so I did some research because I wanted to see as far as like, I know that women in policing, law enforcement, we are 12%, and we've remained that way for many years. There hasn't been major fluctuations. But in broadcast news, so starting with radio, I don't know if you know this, but I was blown away by this. First of all, the first female disc jockey started in 1912. Her name was Sybil Harold, and she was a DJ. It wasn't like talk radio, but she would play her Victrola records on her husband Charles radio station. So that was like the first known DJ, right? And then, this is great. You guys are going to love this. I want both of your reaction to this. So then in 1922, several female voices started being heard on radio stations, talk radio, and they were called hostesses. But the broadcasters complained that the tone quality and speakers made women's higher pitched voices sound shrill, and audiences didn't like or trust women as announcers, and they said only male voices can speak with authority. So then they did a survey in 1926 with 5,000 respondents, and they determined that listeners of both sexes preferred the male voice by a margin of 100-1.
What?
Oh my God.
So I want you guys both to stop talking because your voices are shrill and annoying to me. Ted, would you like to?
This seems like a really good time for me to chime in, and I can take it from here.
Yeah.
Lower your voice, Ted.
Maybe we should all just mute ourselves. Ted, could you speak to us with authority and credibility and just let us shrill away?
I would be happy to. Well, when did women's suffrage, was it 1921, 1919? I mean, we're talking, this poll was 7 years after that?
Yeah.
Women didn't even have a vote, for
Exactly.
a decade when this poll came out.
I know.
And nobody likes change, and so that's what that's all about.
Yeah. Okay, so you're okay with our voices?
Right. I sit on the Museum of Broadcast Communications Board, and I was doing some research. It was last year was the 100th anniversary of radio, since radio was invented. So I was going back, and we were putting this a couple of panels together. And I said, I was adamant for Women's History Month. I said, we need to have some of the top female hosts in Chicago. It was so hard to find female hosts, and I went back, and I was doing a little bit of research too, and I thought, you're not going to believe this. The first woman to have her own radio show, it was Kate Smith, and it was 1931. So a full however many years after radio was invented that a woman even had her own show.
That is so interesting.
What
And
is
now,
she
present day.
Yeah.
Well, maybe. What could a woman possibly talk about?
Toast. I'd like to tell you how I make my toast.
Right. And even when I was at WGN, and this is, and this is not any sort of a knock, because I mean, I spent almost 23 years there. It was my, my blood, sweat, and tears, my heart and soul for all those years. I could count on one hand at one point how many females were on the air.
Yeah, because that's another interesting fact that I uncovered during my research is that most women were hired as program managers. And so they would line up the guests. So present day, there are 13,700 radio hosts currently employed in the United States, and 39.3 are women, 60.7 are men. Does that surprise you?
No.
Okay. Now,
it doesn't. It's unfortunate, but it doesn't.
On television, though, this is fascinating. On television, news anchors. I only looked at news anchors because I got tired of researching because I'm not a researcher. But 51.3% of news anchors are women and 48 are men. So they outnumber men on television. Like what? That's crazy. That's so interesting. What do you make of that?
I would almost think that the percentage, at least the percentages, would indicate that more people enjoy watching women on television and hearing men on the radio. And that's just a guess because of the numbers, just because of the stats.
I would say that you're right on.
I gotta say, what's so striking about that is I watched that movie Bombshell that described the women, Megyn Kelly and the women who took on Fox. And I was so struck by what they were made to wear. I thought,
oh my
God. What? Who does that as credible as credible journalists? They're made to be sexualized. I thought that's just fascinating to me and really sad.
There are two former reporters at CBS 2 in Chicago, Aaron Kennedy and Megan Glaros, and they no longer work there. And they just came out with a story. I don't know if it was a blog post or a story or an article, and they had released some of the memos that they had gotten. And this is within the past 10 years. This isn't even going back 30, 40 years.
Is this going to be horrible?
And
wait, listeners, hang on to the side of the treadmill. Or
it was, and I'm gonna have to get the article for you,
please,
ladies, to post. But it was things like, you don't dress for your friends, you dress for air. And there was a list of things that they were not able to wear or were supposed to wear.
Fascinating. Ted, has that happened to you where you've been told to wear a leopard skin?
It is a
chaps,
neutral.
right? You want to get the chaps in?
Well, I was just going to let you fill in the blank there, but has that ever happened to you? What is it like for appearance for men?
Well, Andrea and I could just hijack this conversation from here because, I've always thought about with men, it's a uniform, right? Suit top, suit pants, shirt and tie, boom, done. And I've always wondered, and I think we saw this in the 2016 election and the run-up in Hillary, and just what can a woman wear that is acceptable to everyone? The pantsuit wasn't acceptable to everyone, right? Because it's not feminine enough. And what is she supposed to be doing? Wearing dresses? Is she supposed to be wearing skirts? And for men, it's like, it's so easy. We just put on a suit and tie and we are done. And I've always felt bad for the females who've got to really think about, am I going to wear sleeveless on the air? Is that too much, or should I wear, and it's just not a question for men.
Okay, I will say though, we're going on a totally other tangent, but it's fascinating to me. I have noticed, since the inception of HD TV, and I've noticed that more men are taking their appearance a lot more seriously. And I'm this is a kind way. I'm not sure I'm weighing my words here, but a kind way of saying, like, there are people like that are, getting some stuff done, and, doing some little pinches and stuff, and I'm seeing more men that are saying, oh, heck yeah, I do that because I'm on camera and it's HD. And so, and women have told me that too, but is that something that's relatively new, or have men just really are just like, whatever, like, do you think about appearance in that way that we do? Because that's what I think is, if I get invited somewhere, my first thought is, what am I going to wear? How am I going to, yeah, I mean, it's just like, does your head automatically go there, or is that just a luxury that it doesn't even live inside your head where you don't even think about that?
I don't have to think about it.
Oh, and that's infuriating.
Yeah. And when men grow older in the TV industry, they become more distinguished and more trusted.
Yeah.
And women get shipped out the door, right? Not necessarily all the time. If you've established yourself, then you're going to be able to hang on there and have a career. You've got a name brand. But I mean, Andrea, you know exactly what I'm talking about here. Women can age out of this business. Men don't. And it might be changing.
And that's still prevalent. Okay.
Absolutely. I really think, I think you've hit 100%, Ted. I really do. I think, if anybody, it might not be said, outright, but I do think, I mean, unfortunately, there is this, you do time out. And that's just evident in not getting hired for certain roles or prominent roles anymore.
Yeah.
We call it a shelf life in policing. It's like you got a little shelf life. And
is it, that's a great question. Is that the same for women in policing? Or no?
That's an interesting, we've never really discussed this. I mean, I haven't seen that. Some of the most prominent, well, maybe I have, but some of the most prominent women in law enforcement, are certainly retired. But, I look at, Kathy O'Toole, who's just as relevant today as she was when she was, the commissioner in chief. She was Boston, Seattle, but as far as a chief's job, but I would also say that about men too. I don't know that, that you'll get, a gentleman, coming in later years in the same way. I would say policing, and correct me if you've got a different idea about that, Sil, but I think that it's I really think that it's on par for both genders. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say the age really doesn't seem to be a barrier. Physical fitness does seem to be a barrier, because I think folks want to see someone that could perform the functions of the job. We talk about it, and in reporting, those are long days. Media, it's long days, and you have to have an endurance. It's one of the things that is understated quite often in terms of a leadership necessity. You have to have endurance, and it's not only endurance physically, but it's emotionally and intellectually. And so that is really important. And having a physical fitness kind of standard, I think, is where you get some senses of judgment there.
Totally. Okay, so beat change again. Okay, so now I just want to dish. So when you are on the air, because you are a magnificent interviewer, and I don't say that because you're my pal, my mate. When you get on a radio show with Andrea podcast or whatever it may be, or when she interviews, it is the most seamless thing, because as she's talking now, it's like, this gift that you have, that you just engage in conversation. So I've never had to do that. It's been interesting. So being on this podcast is like trying to learn the finesse, and it's a lot harder than it looks. And that's why I tell people that Sil and I are just trying to suck at something new, because this is, interviewing people. So I've also noticed, and my question to you is that there are some people that I think are so fascinating on paper. And then when I talk to them, I'm like, oh God, no, I can't invite them on the podcast. What do you vet? Do you know what I'm talking about? Is they can like be so accomplished, and yet if they're not interesting, or if they're monotone, if their inflections are flat, it's like almost even like a college professor. I don't care how smart you are if you've lost my attention. So do you vet people before they come on to determine, and let's just talk radio, because television is totally different, but do you vet them before they come on, even though they are a person, with, maybe prominent, with high competency, and then let's say they do come on and they're just so boring. Like, how do you pull that out? How do you pull out personality?
That's a really good question. I've always loved interviewing, and I've always been the type of an interviewer that I will never, ever back a guest into a corner.
Yeah.
I always want, whether it's radio or TV, and I know you said just focus on radio, but especially with TV, all of my interviews, I always tried to pride myself on making whoever it is feel comfortable, because it's not an everyday occurrence for somebody to be on camera. It's a little less intimidating being on the radio, because you can just sit in your pajamas or sit on your couch and do the interview. TV, you have to have the appearance and present well on camera and not shift. And so I've always just kind of wanted to make whoever I'm interviewing comfortable. And then beat change back to radio. So I don't vet, if I'm interviewing somebody, I find them interesting enough where I think I can pull it out of them. I think I can pull the best out of them, because it's interesting to me. I want my show to sound good. I want them to sound good. I want it to be win-win for everybody, and make them comfortable for their next interview, and then maybe have them back on any given day. So, I'll vet the people who are kind of long form, or maybe in a feature kind of a role. But if it's like a newsmaker, like an alder person, or, a senator or somebody like that who I was interviewing, they're going to have a little bit of shine. It's just my job to kind of polish it up, and I always try and ask questions that will be open-ended, where again, they can bring their best, bring their A game, and have them look good too. Because again, that's what people want to hear. That makes for good radio and good TV. That makes for a good interview.
Yeah.
When you bring the best out of someone.
I don't think people understand what a skill that is, to draw that out of people, right, Sil? I mean, think about that. Is like what a skill that takes for you to, talk with someone who is not comfortable. This is not their forte. You do this all the time. You know how to fill in, all of the white space. But what a skill that is.
You guys are too kind.
It's
You guys are too
it's a
kind, and you
superpower.
both do a great job.
It
at
is a
this.
superpower. You're so right,
Andrea.
Sylvia. It's a superpower.
Oh,
So, Andre, are you got, now that you're working, at U of I, does this, but you haven't left the business. I know that, like, you left for 5 minutes and then you
Yeah.
just, that, I mean, and I know, so it's like,
it pulled me back
is.
in, Kristen.
And I guess that's the question is, like, it's just, you can't quit it, can you? Because it's like, it's almost like policing. It's like this, the adrenaline rush that you get knowing, because you have that high stress. It's like, you've got to tell the story. It's different every day. You have new guests on, you have to build, the package. You have to, after I learned what the package was, I was like, why is everyone calling it a package?
You with your TV talk.
I know. So if anyone is taking applications, but so it's like is that, it's just this thing that you've chased it for so long, and it's like adrenaline. Is that why you decided I'm gonna do both? Because you do have the best of both worlds right now.
I do. I have the best of both worlds. So I left full time after, again, 23 years at WGN Radio. I had the opportunity to go back, and this was right before COVID, right before George Floyd and all the riots that occurred in 2020. So, I mean, I left before all of this happened, and I had the opportunity to go back and work for my alma mater, the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, for a former news director of mine. She was my very first news director in Champaign, and we had stayed in touch, and she's one of the best news directors, news writers, news anchors, news people that I had ever worked for. And she said, come work for me at the U of I. And this kind of goes back to your vetting question, Kristen. So now I work for the U of I in public affairs with a cool fancy title. And I'm responsible for putting the chancellor on the Chicago media stations and all of our experts, professors. And I will, speak to, because their role is mainly in the classroom and speaking. So I want to make sure before I put an expert on Chicago media, they're prepared and they're trained. So in that case, I'm kind of going back to your previous question. I will vet, and talk to them and make sure they're good to go. But as part of my role, I said to my boss, who gets it and has been so wonderful and so understanding, I said, I still wanted to keep a show that I did at WGN called Andrea and the Reporters and Andrea's Chicago. And I would just talk about different things going on in Chicago. And I would interview reporters from different stations, TV and radio, just about the business and our backstories. And it really was it was great. And then COVID hit, the riots hit, and everything really kind of changed. And everybody who I worked with at WGN was either gone, they were let go, or they quit. They went to different stations. They left the business. And many went to WLS radio, including the program director now, and a lot of friends, Steve Cochran, Pete McMurray, Kim Gordon, had just kind of shifted to that station. So I talked to my former program director and who's now the current program director at WLS, and I said, what if we get a podcast going again and called it Show and Tell? And it's lighthearted and fun and talks about all the plays that are going on in the city and all the museums and different exhibits and festivals and immersive exhibits, you name it. If it's cultural, arts, entertainment, we feature it. And I interview just all different folks, 4 or 5 a week.
Okay,
for my
pause.
Podcast, which is now,
pause.
which is now a show too.
Okay, pause. So basically, I'm going to reiterate how this sounds to me, is that you get to go to all of these amazing musicals and you get to meet the actors and you get to interview them, all of they're celebs in my mind. And so, like, if I had to do that, I would not be able to speak because I would just be starstruck at some of the people that you get to talk to. So what an amazing job that you get to do is, number one, is to uplift the arts and all of these amazing things happening in the city of Chicago. Talk to those people who are bringing this beautiful art and putting it out into the world. And that is your job. I mean, do you just
That's stupid.
oh my God, I have the best job in the world.
It is. It's fun. It keeps me still in radio. I do it on the weekends. It's a blast. It's fun. I really enjoy it. And again, we were behind. We were quarantined and behind closed doors for 18 months. Some of us 20 months. So when we reemerged, everything had changed. Not just news-wise, but just the way we observed and the world around us and our culture and our arts and entertainment scene. And it was the first time we were seeing these immersive exhibits like Prince and Van Gogh and Frida Kahlo and And now so many museums, remember you used to go to the Art Institute and you couldn't touch anything, or you couldn't now. So again, COVID was a game changer in a positive way, in this sense that when we reemerged, and I said, let's start interviewing these people, for all these different ideas and creativity that they've come up with. So that's kind of what we do now. We, to kind of go back to it. So it is a blast. It's fun. It's just seeing things through a different light and a different perspective. And I hope giving people just an appreciation of everything great that there is out there, especially in Chicago.
Oh my God, of course. Well, you are, truly, I know that you are one of the biggest fans of Chicago, as am I. But you you truly, just epitomize, the culture there. And it's so amazing to talk to two of the strongest women I know. And I love that we could all get together here. So thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate you and all that you do for the industry of media and journalism and all that you continue to do. And of course, for your friendship. I love and adore you. So thank you so much.
You guys both, thank you, thank you, thank you. I love you guys. And thank you, both of you, for all you've done for policing, keeping us safe, everything that you've done for your profession and for women. Because I was just in an event right before this, and I apologize for my lateness. To have strong women, this is what we need to do. Women uplifting women, promoting other women, because this is really, we get things done. We do.
I'm going to keep that as the last word. And I'm going to say that also we love the support from Ted Madden. This podcast is produced by him, and the song that you are about to hear is written and performed exclusively for this podcast by my handsome and talented son, Jake Zeman, and his accomplished friends, Fabian Guerrero and Zoe Replinger. If you like the podcast, please subscribe and review it and tell everyone you know about it. If you don't, just move along. There's nothing more to see here. Bye to our millions of listeners. Bye.
Bye.
When you look inside, what do you find? Are you content to fall behind? When you lose your way and you've lost your why? Have courage and get ready to fight the hollow bunny. When the way ahead is covered in smoke and you're tired and you're scared and you're losing hope, you'll open your heart and your eyes to see a challenge and a question. Why not me? To fight the hollow bunny. And we all feel hollow sometimes, but the monsters are only in your mind. It's a tough pill to swallow, but if you're brave and kind, you'll be alright. If you fight the hollow bunny. When the challenge ahead scares you to death, you tame the imposter inside instead. To change the world, you've got to start small. It takes a leader to say, I don't know it all, and I know I'm gonna fall, but I'll pick it up and come back stronger, failing forward and moving onward, doing the hard thing and the right thing, forever fighting the hollow bunny. And we all feel hollow sometimes, but the monsters are only in your mind. It's a tough pill to swallow, but if you're brave and kind, you'll be alright. If you fight the hollow bunny. If you're tough on the outside but empty within, something's gonna crack, you've gotta start again. You're tough on the outside but empty within, something's gonna crack, you've gotta start again. The monsters are